Kim Tae-yang walked slowly down the metal ramp of the Earth transport ship. His black shoes made soft clicking sounds on the cold floor of the alien space station. Around him stood dozens of different alien creatures watching his every move. Some had 4 arms, others had scales instead of skin, and a few looked like walking rocks with glowing eyes. The human diplomat carried only a simple leather briefcase in his left hand. His right hand stayed free and relaxed at his side, just like his old training had taught him 15 years ago when he was still Lieutenant Kim Tae-yang of the Navy SEALs. Back then his hands had held assault rifles and combat knives. Now they held peace treaties and trade agreements. The Vorthan soldiers lined both sides of the corridor leading to the diplomatic quarters. Each alien warrior stood 8 feet tall with thick gray skin that looked like natural armor plates. Their 4 muscular arms ended in clawed hands that could crush steel. Their red eyes followed Tae-yang as he walked past them with calm, steady steps. Commander Gorvak stepped forward from the group of Vorthan officers. His massive frame blocked most of the corridor, forcing Tae-yang to stop just a few feet away. The alien commander looked down at the human with obvious amusement in his burning red eyes. "This is what the mighty Earth sends to negotiate with the Vorthan Empire," Gorvak said in his deep, growling voice. One small human carrying a briefcase like some kind of office worker. The other Vorthan soldiers laughed at their commander's words. The sound echoed through the metal corridors like the roar of hungry beasts. They had expected Earth to send their strongest warriors, or at least someone who looked dangerous instead. They got a man in a business suit who barely reached their chest. Tae-yang bowed his head slightly in the traditional Earth greeting gesture. "I am Kim Tae-yang, diplomatic representative of the United Earth Government. I come here hoping that our 2 great civilizations can find a path to lasting peace." More laughter erupted from the assembled aliens. Even the non-Vorthan species seemed amused by the polite human with his soft-spoken words and gentle manner. They whispered among themselves in various alien languages, but Tae-yang caught enough words to understand their meaning. "Weak," they said, "pathetic, no threat." What the aliens did not know was that Tae-yang understood their languages much better than he let on. His military intelligence training had included extensive study of alien communication systems. He also did not tell them about the small scars hidden under his diplomatic suit or the way his eyes automatically counted exit routes and weapon positions. The space station itself was a marvel of Vorthan engineering. It stretched for miles in every direction with multiple levels connected by transport tubes and gravitational lifts. The outer hull was covered in weapon batteries and shield generators, while the inner sections housed everything from barracks to research laboratories. General Krax emerged from a side corridor flanked by his personal guard. The Vorthan military leader was even larger than Commander Gorvak, with ceremonial armor plates welded directly into his natural skin. His 4 arms each bore different military decorations, and his face showed the scars of countless battles. "So, this is the human who thinks he can make us change our expansion plans," Krax said, while circling around Tae-yang like a predator studying its prey. "You look even smaller than the report suggested." Tae-yang kept his expression neutral and professional. "I believe there are always alternatives to conflict. General Krax, Earth has much to offer the Vorthan Empire in terms of trade, technology, and mutual defense agreements." "Mutual defense," the general repeated with a snort. "What could humans possibly defend us against? Your entire species has been in space for less than 2 centuries. We have been conquering star systems since before your ancestors discovered fire." The human diplomat opened his briefcase and pulled out a data pad containing Earth's preliminary proposals. "I think you might be surprised by human capabilities, General, but more importantly, I believe we can create agreements that benefit both our peoples without the need for military action." As Tae-yang spoke, he noticed several things that his diplomatic training told him to ignore, but his combat instincts filed away for later use. The security cameras in this section of the station were older models with blind spots near the ceiling support beams. The Vorthan guards carried energy weapons that required a 2-second charging cycle before firing. Their armor looked impressive, but had obvious weak points at the joints. The first day of negotiations took place in a large conference room with a circular table made from some kind of blue crystal. Representatives from 6 different alien species sat around the table, each With their own agenda and territorial disputes, Earth had been invited not as an equal partner, but as a curiosity. Presented his proposals with calm professionalism. He spoke about mining rights in disputed asteroid fields, joint research, projects for new technologies, and patrol agreements for trade routes. His voice remained steady and diplomatic even when the aliens interrupted him with insults or dismissive comments. The Zentari ambassador, an insect-like creature with compound eyes, kept clicking her mandibles in what Taiyang recognized as their species' version of laughter every time the human mentioned human military capabilities. She would make the clicking sound and shake her triangular head. The representative from the Cristalli Federation seemed more interested in the human's biological structure than his diplomatic proposals. The living crystal being kept asking questions about human bone density, muscle fiber, and reaction times as if he were studying a laboratory specimen. During breaks between sessions, Taiyang walked through the station's public areas, observing the daily routines of the different species. He noticed that most aliens gave him a wide berth not out of respect, but because they saw him as fragile and potentially clumsy among their more robust physiques. On his second day aboard the station, Taiyang began to pick up concerning signals during conversations. The Vorthan officers were not discussing the peace proposals in their private meetings. Instead, their communications focused on terms like incident and mechanical failure and unfortunate accident. His enhanced hearing, a skill developed through years of special operations training, allowed him to catch fragments of whispered conversations as he passed through corridors. The aliens did not realize that human ears were more sensitive than they appeared, or that Taiyang had spent years learning to gather intelligence from seemingly casual encounters. That evening, in his assigned quarters, Taiyang reviewed the day's negotiations while listening to the sounds of the station around him. The metal walls carried vibrations and voices from other sections, allowing him to monitor activity throughout his area of the facility. Through the thin walls, he heard General Krax speaking with his subordinates in the adjacent military briefing room. The Vorthans were discussing something they called the final solution to the human problem they planned to remove Earth's diplomatic representative permanently in blame. His death on a systems malfunction. Taiyang set down his datapad and walked to the small mirror mounted on his quarters wall. The face looking back at him was the same one that had fooled alien security scanners for 3 days, a middle-aged human diplomat with kind eyes and a gentle smile. But behind that diplomatic mask lived something else entirely. 15 years of Navy SEAL training did not simply disappear when someone changed careers. The muscle memory remained, along with the tactical thinking and the ability to turn everyday objects into weapons. His diplomatic briefcase contained more than just peace treaties and trade agreements. Hidden in false compartments were items that could serve multiple purposes if the situation demanded it. The next morning, Taiyang continued his diplomatic duties as if nothing had changed. He smiled politely at the aliens who were planning his death. He discussed trade routes with creatures who saw him as nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. He even complimented General Krax on the station's impressive security systems, but underneath his calm professional exterior, the Navy SEAL was making his own plans. He memorized guard rotations, identified weapons caches, and located emergency systems throughout the station. His diplomatic training had taught him to read people and predict their behavior. His military training had taught him what to do when prediction became reality. The aliens thought they were dealing with a weak human who could be easily eliminated. They had no idea that Earth had sent them a predator disguised as a peacemaker. As the third day of negotiations began, Taiyang knew that the Vorthans would make their move soon. The way they looked at him had changed from amusement to cold calculation. They were no longer laughing at the small human diplomat. They were preparing to kill him. What they did not understand was that Taiyang was also preparing, and when the time came, they would learn the difference between a human who preferred peace and a human who was no longer allowed to choose. The morning of the third day started like any other diplomatic session. Taiyang sat at the crystal conference table reviewing trade agreements while alien representatives discussed territorial boundaries around him. The Vorthan officers seemed more relaxed today, almost friendly in their interactions with the human diplomat. General Krax approached Taiyang during the morning break, carrying what appeared to be architectural plans of the space station. The massive alien smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth that had evolved for tearing flesh rather than displaying friendship. Diplomat Kim, I have been thinking about our discussions regarding human technology sharing, Crack said while spreading the plans across the table. Perhaps you would benefit from seeing our engineering capabilities firsthand. Taeng looked up from his datapad with polite interest. That sounds very educational, General. I would appreciate learning more about Vorthan construction methods, the General pointed to sections of the station blueprint marked in red alien script. These areas show our most advanced power generation systems. Very impressive technology that might interest your Earth engineers. The systems are located in the lower maintenance levels, where we can demonstrate their full capacity. 6 Vorthan soldiers moved closer to the table, their heavy boots creating metallic echoes on the station's floor. Each warrior carried a full complement of weapons, including plasma rifles, energy sidearms, and traditional blade weapons. Their red eyes focused on Taeyang with an intensity that seemed unusual for a simple engineering. Tour Commander Gorvak joined the group carrying additional equipment that looked more suited for combat operations than diplomatic demonstrations. We should leave immediately while the power systems are running at peak efficiency, he said. The lower levels can be dangerous for species unfamiliar with our technology. Nodded and gathered his diplomatic materials, including his leather briefcase. I am honored by your invitation to see such important facilities, he replied, while mentally noting the increased security presence around the conference room. The group moved through the station's main corridors, passing other alien species who watched the procession with curiosity. Several Zentari diplomats clicked their mandibles in what Taeyang recognized as their equivalent of nervous laughter. The Crystalli representative vibrated with frequencies that suggested concern or anticipation. As they walked deeper into the station, Taeyang observed that the normal security cameras were becoming less frequent. The corridors grew narrower and the lighting dimmed to levels that would make human vision less effective. His diplomatic training told him to comment on the impressive architecture. His military training told him to remember every turn and exit. The maintenance elevators that carried them to the lower levels were designed for Vorthan physiology, making the human feel even smaller among his escorts. The aliens stood in positions that blocked his access to the elevator controls while maintaining what appeared to be casual conversation about engineering specifications. 20 minutes later, the group emerged into a vast chamber filled with humming machinery and glowing energy conduits. The power generation equipment stretched from floor to ceiling, creating a maze of metal corridors and alcoves, perfect for hiding activities that station security was not supposed to record. This is the heart of our space station, General, Krax announced with obvious pride. These reactors provide energy for our weapon systems, life support, and propulsion drives. Very dangerous for most species, especially humans, who are not adapted to high-energy environments. The Vorthan soldiers spread out through the chamber, taking positions that appeared random, but actually blocked every visible exit. Taeyang noted their movements while maintaining his diplomatic composure and continuing to ask questions about the impressive technology surrounding them. Commander Gorvak activated a portable device that began emitting electronic interference, designed to disrupt communication signals. Now we can speak freely about technical matters without worrying about industrial espionage, he said with a grin that showed too many teeth. The human diplomat set his briefcase down on a nearby equipment console and began removing his suit jacket. The chamber was indeed warm from the energy systems, but his real reason for the action was to give himself better freedom of movement. General Krax, you mentioned that these systems can be dangerous for humans, Taeyang said while loosening his tie. Could you explain what specific hazards? I should be aware of. The massive alien commander stepped closer, eliminating the last pretense of diplomatic courtesy. The biggest hazard, Diplomat Kim, is that humans are too weak to deserve a place in this galaxy. Your species thinks they can negotiate as equals with warriors who have conquered star systems for millennia. The soldiers raised their weapons but kept them pointed at the floor rather than directly at their target. They wanted Taeyang's death to appear accidental rather than an obvious execution. The plan was clearly to claim that the human had suffered a tragic accident while touring dangerous industrial equipment. Your death will send a clear message to Earth, Krax continued, that humans should accept their place as a minor species. Under Vorthan protection, we will offer your government our sincere condolences and perhaps A generous compensation package. Taeyang rolled up his sleeves and checked his watch as if he were simply uncomfortable in the warm chamber. I appreciate your honesty, General, he said calmly, but I think there might be something about humans that you do not understand, Commander. Gorvik laughed with genuine amusement. What could a weak diplomat possibly tell experienced warriors like us? You spend your time writing documents and attending meetings while we conquer planets. The human reached into his briefcase and removed what appeared to be a simple diplomatic seal, actually a piece of hardened ceramic that could serve as both an identification device and an improvised weapon. We are not all diplomats, he replied quietly. What else could you possibly be? Krax demanded. The reports from our intelligence services are very clear. Humans are a peaceful species with limited military experience. Your longest war lasted only 6 years and involved primitive chemical weapons. Taeyang smiled the same diplomatic smile he had worn for 3 days, but now something different showed in his eyes. The aliens had spent their time studying human history and technology, but they had not bothered to learn about human individuals. Before I became a diplomat, I spent 15 years in what Earth calls Special Operations Forces, he said while moving slightly away from the equipment console. We have a saying. In my old unit, the only easy day was yesterday. The first soldier finally raised his plasma rifle to firing position, but hesitated when he saw that the human showed no fear. Instead, Taeyang appeared to be calculating distances and angles like a predator selecting the best approach to multiple prey. General Krax, I think you should know something important about my species. Taeyang continued, we prefer peace because we are very, very good at war. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as the human diplomat transformed before their eyes. His polite diplomatic posture shifted into something that looked like a coiled spring ready to explode into violence. His kind eyes became cold and focused, scanning for weaknesses in their positions. You see, General, humans learned a long time ago that the best warriors are often the ones who understand the true cost of violence. We send diplomats to prevent wars not because we cannot fight them, but because we know exactly how terrible we can be. When fighting becomes necessary, the Vorthan soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. They had expected to execute a helpless civilian, not face someone who seemed to welcome the prospect of combat. Their target was supposed to beg for mercy or try to run. Instead, he appeared to be measuring the distance between himself and their weapons. My old unit had a motto, Taeyang said while slowly reaching for the ceramic seal in his briefcase. The only easy day was yesterday, but we also had an unofficial saying that we used when civilians were threatened. The first soldier tightened his grip on his weapon and stepped forward. What saying? Taeyang smiled one last diplomatic smile before 15 years of Navy SEAL training took control of his actions. Nobody comes home until everybody comes home. The first Vorthan soldier never saw the attack coming. Taeyang moved faster than any human the aliens had ever observed. His diplomatic training had taught him to read body language and predict behavior, but his SEAL training had taught him to kill efficiently and without hesitation. Taeyang crossed the distance between himself and the nearest soldier in less than 2 seconds. His left hand grabbed the alien's weapon arm while his right drove the ceramic diplomatic seal into the creature's throat. With surgical precision, the Vorthan dropped his plasma rifle and collapsed, gasping for air through his damaged breathing system. The second soldier tried to swing his weapon toward the human, but Taeyang was already moving, using the falling body of his first victim as a shield. The plasma blast meant for the diplomat instead struck his own teammate. The human rolled across the metal floor, grabbing the dropped rifle and coming up in a firing position behind a power generator. General Krax roared in fury and disbelief. This is impossible. He is just a human diplomat. How can he move like a warrior? Taeyang used the machinery around him as cover while addressing the general. I told you, General, I used to be in special operations. Before I learned to make peace, I learned to make war very effectively. The third soldier tried to flank Taeyang by moving through the maze of power conduits, but the human had already mapped every possible approach route during his diplomatic tour. He waited until the alien was committed to his path, then emerged from behind a different generator. The soldier walked directly into a perfectly timed strike that sent him crashing into a control panel. Sparks flew from the damaged equipment as the Vorthan's electronic systems began to malfunction. The chamber lighting flickered between bright and dim, creating moving shadows that Taiyang used to disappear and reappear like a ghost commander. Gorvek fired his weapon repeatedly at the moving shadows but hit only empty air and machinery. You cannot defeat all of us human. There are too many and you are alone, Taiyang. Voice came from somewhere in the mechanical maze, sounding calm and conversational. I was alone on many missions, Commander. Sometimes being alone is an advantage. The fourth soldier tried to coordinate with his remaining teammates by using hand signals, but found that the humans seemed to understand their military communications. The soldier moved toward what he thought was an empty area, only to discover that Taiyang had anticipated his route. The ceramic seal struck again, this time breaking the soldier's weapon arm and sending his rifle spinning away into the darkness. The alien fell backward into a power coupling that delivered enough electrical energy to render him unconscious. General Krax drew his ceremonial sword, a massive blade designed for his four-armed physiology. You may have surprised us, human, but I am a Vorthan general. I have never been defeated. In single combat, Taiyang emerged from behind a power generator holding a piece of broken machinery that he had shaped into an improvised weapon. Your mistake, General, was thinking this would be single combat. The fifth soldier chose that moment to attack from behind, but Taiyang had been tracking his position through reflections in the polished metal surfaces. He spun around and threw his improvised weapon with deadly accuracy. The heavy metal piece struck the soldier in the center of his chest armor, sending him flying backward into a wall. Now only Commander Gorvek and General Krax remained standing. Both alien warriors were breathing heavily and looking around the chamber with new understanding. The small human diplomat had systematically destroyed their ambush using nothing but improvised weapons and superior tactics. You were a soldier, Gorvek said while raising his plasma rifle. This changes nothing. We are still Vorthan warriors and you are still just one human. Taiyang picked up another fallen weapon and checked its power levels. I was not just a soldier, Commander, I was a Navy SEAL. That means I was trained to operate behind enemy lines against superior numbers. With minimal equipment, the human began moving through the machinery, again forcing both aliens to split their attention between multiple possible attack routes. They tried to coordinate their positions, but found that Taiyang seemed to predict their movements before they made them. Earth military trains us to think differently than most species, Taiyang continued while staying mobile. We do not fight fair. We fight to win. General Krax charged forward with his massive sword raised above his head. The blade could have cut a normal human in half, but Taiyang was no longer behaving like a normal human. He slid under the general's attack, grabbed a power cable, and used it to trip the massive alien. The general crashed to the floor with enough force to crack the metal deck plates. His sword skittered away into the shadows, leaving him defenseless. Taiyang stood over him, holding the power cable like a weapon. Commander Gorvek fired his plasma rifle in desperation, but his shots went wide as panic affected his aim. The human was no longer where the alien expected him to be, moving with a fluid grace that made him seem to flow between the machinery like water. You want to know the difference between a human diplomat and a human warrior? Taiyang asked while advancing steadily toward the last standing enemy. A diplomat tries to find solutions that everyone can live with. A warrior finds solutions that ensure his people survive. Gorvek back toward what he thought was an exit, but discovered that Taiyang had herded him into a dead end surrounded by high voltage equipment. The human held a plasma rifle taken from one of the fallen soldiers, but kept it pointed at the floor. The diplomat is still here, Commander, Taiyang said quietly. I still want peace between our species, but right now you have made peace impossible, so the warrior has to finish what you started. The final confrontation lasted only seconds. Commander Gorvek made one last desperate attempt to reach his sidearm, but 15 years of combat training proved superior to alien strength and reached the commander. Joined his teammates on the chamber floor, unconscious but alive. General Krax struggled to stand but found that his legs would not support his weight. You have won this battle, human, but there are thousands more Vorthan warriors on this station. Taiyang helped the general into a sitting position against a power generator, showing the same courtesy he had displayed during diplomatic sessions. Then I suggest you contact them, General, and explain that the peace talks will continue. Under new circumstances, the chamber fell silent except for the humming of machinery and the groaning of defeated alien soldiers. Tang straightened his tie, adjusted his suit jacket, and picked up his diplomatic briefcase as if nothing unusual had happened. When station security arrives, General, you can tell them that there was an unfortunate accident during the facility tour, Taiyang said while walking toward the chamber exit. Several of your soldiers were injured by malfunctioning equipment. Cracks stared at the human with a mixture of fear and respect. What are you going to tell them? Taiyang paused at the exit and looked back at the scene of destruction. That I learned a great deal about Vorthan engineering capabilities, he replied, and that I look forward to continuing our productive negotiations. As he walked away from the power chamber, Kim Taeyang transformed back into a diplomat, but the aliens would never again see him as just a harmless human carrying a briefcase. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth's peaceful nature came from strength, not weakness. News of the incident in the power chamber spread through the space station faster than a plasma fire. Ambassador Park Ji-won from the Zentari Federation was the first alien diplomat to approach Kim Taeyang after he returned to his quarters. The insect-like creature stood in the corridor, clicking her mandibles nervously while waiting for permission to enter. Diplomat Kim, she said in her translated voice, may I speak with you privately about what happened in the lower level? Staying opened his door wider to allow her inside. His diplomatic smile remained in place, but now the aliens who saw it understood that there was something predatory hiding behind his polite expression. Of course, Ambassador Park, I am always available for diplomatic discussions. The Zentari ambassador entered his quarters, moving with the careful steps of someone who suddenly realized they might be in the presence of a dangerous predator. Her compound eyes reflected the room's lighting as she studied the human. With new respect, we received reports that there was some kind of accident during your facility tour, she said while keeping her distance from the human diplomat. Several Vorthan soldiers were injured and General Krax was found unconscious. Taeyang poured himself a cup of earth coffee from the diplomatic supplies in his quarters. Yes, it was quite unfortunate. The Vorthan power systems are very dangerous for species not familiar with their operation. I was lucky to avoid injury myself, Ambassador. Park clicked her mandibles in what Taeyang now recognized as nervous laughter. The security footage from that section of the station seems to have malfunctioned during the incident. How convenient that the cameras failed at exactly that time. The human took a sip of his coffee and maintained eye contact with the alien diplomat. Technical malfunctions are common around high-energy equipment. Ambassador, I am sure the Vorthan engineers will fix the problem soon. Within 2 hours, every major species representative on the station had requested private meetings with the Earth diplomat. The Crystalli Federation sent their living crystal ambassador, who vibrated with frequencies that indicated extreme curiosity. Your species continues to surprise us, Diplomat Kim, the crystal being said through harmonic vibrations translated into standard galactic language. We had assumed humans were primarily a peaceful civilization with limited military capabilities. Taeyang set down his coffee cup and leaned back in his chair. Most humans do prefer peaceful solutions to conflicts, Ambassador. But that preference comes from understanding the alternatives, not from weakness. The crystal ambassador shifted colors from blue to deep purple, indicating deep thought. Are you saying that human diplomats receive military training as part of their education? Not exactly, Taeyang replied. Many human diplomats do have military backgrounds because we believe that understanding war helps us appreciate peace. But we also believe that people who know how to fight are often the most motivated to avoid fighting. The news traveled beyond the space station through subspace communications that reached every major civilization in the galaxy. Military intelligence services that had dismissed humans as a minor species suddenly began requesting detailed reports about Earth defensive capabilities. Admiral Lee Hyjin of the Earth Space Command received an encrypted message while reviewing patrol schedules in her office on Luna Base. The communication came from Kim Taeyang using diplomatic codes that indicated a significant change in the galactic political situation. Admiral, the message read: the Vorthan Empire attempted to eliminate me during peace negotiations. The attempt failed and the situation has been contained. However, I believe you should prepare for increased interest in human military capabilities from multiple alien species. The Admiral immediately convened a meeting with Earth Military Command to discuss the implications of the incident. Intelligence reports from their agents throughout the galaxy confirmed that alien governments were reassessing their assumptions about human strength. On the hegemony of Skor Homeworld War Chief Thurgan called an emergency session of their military council. The aggressive species had been planning expansion into human-controlled space, but the reports from the Vorthen station made them reconsider their timeline. If a single human diplomat can defeat multiple Vorthen soldiers, then what capabilities do their actual military forces possess? Thurgan asked his assembled generals. Our intelligence estimates may have been seriously flawed. The Skor military analysts pulled up holographic displays showing their previous assessments of human combat effectiveness. All of their calculations had been based on the assumption that humans were a peaceful species with limited fighting experience. General Vex, the Empire's top military strategist, highlighted sections of the intelligence reports that suddenly seemed more significant. The humans call their diplomats peacemakers, but perhaps we should have paid more attention to what they made peace from back on the space station. The atmosphere in the diplomatic quarters had completely changed. Alien representatives who had previously ignored or dismissed Kim Tang now approached him with obvious caution and respect. The casual arrogance that had characterized the first days of negotiations disappeared during the next scheduled negotiation session. Taiyang entered the conference room to find that the seating arrangements had been subtly altered. His chair had been moved to a position that gave him clear views of all exits and placed him where he could not be surrounded by other delegates. General Krax attended the session despite his injuries from the power chamber incident. The massive Vorthen commander moved carefully and kept his hands visible on the table at all times. When he spoke to the human diplomat, his tone had changed from condescending to respectful. Diplomat Kim, I believe we may have had some misunderstandings about the nature of human civilization, he said while avoiding direct eye contact. Perhaps we should reconsider some of our previous assumptions. Staying nodded diplomatically. I appreciate your willingness to approach these negotiations with fresh perspectives. General, sometimes unfortunate incidents can lead to better understanding between species. The other alien delegates observed this exchange with fascination. They were witnessing a complete reversal of power dynamics. The species that had been planning to eliminate the human representative was now treating him as an equal, or perhaps even as a superior. Commander Gorvak, who had also survived the power chamber encounter, sat at the far end of the table. His forearms remained folded and his red eyes tracked every movement the human made. The Vorthen officer had learned to see Kim Tang as something far more dangerous than a simple diplomat. Ambassador Park from the Zentari Federation leaned forward to address the group. I believe we should discuss new frameworks for interspecies cooperation, she said while glancing at Taiyang. Perhaps we have all been thinking too narrowly about the benefits of alliance with Earth. The human diplomat smiled and opened his briefcase to remove fresh copies of Earth negotiation proposals. I am pleased that everyone seems more interested in productive discussions, he said. The original terms I presented are still available, but I have prepared some additional options that might interest you. What none of the aliens realized was that the additional options heavily favored Earth in ways that would become apparent only after the treaties were signed. Taiyang had used their changed attitudes to create agreements that would establish human influence throughout this sector of the galaxy. The Crystalli ambassador vibrated at frequencies indicating approval. These new proposals seem quite reasonable, she said through harmonic translation. Earth appears to be a very generous negotiating partner. By the end of that day's session, 3 different alien species had signed preliminary agreements with Earth. The Vorthen Empire requested a private meeting to discuss what they called special defensive cooperation arrangements. As the alien delegates filed out of the conference room, Tang remained seated reviewing his notes. The transformation in their behavior confirmed what his military training had taught him 15 years earlier. Strength respected strength and weakness invited aggression. His diplomatic briefcase now contained signed agreements that would change the balance of power. In this region of space, the aliens thought they were negotiating with a peaceful species that had proven unexpectedly dangerous. They did not yet understand that they were dealing with a civilization that had been preparing for this moment since they first reached the stars. The galaxy was about to learn that human diplomacy was backed by capabilities they had never imagined. 3 days after the power chamber incident, Fleet Commander Yuan Subin arrived at the space station aboard the Earth cruiser Harmony. Her ship carried what appeared to be a small diplomatic escort, but the alien observers noted that these escorts moved with the same quiet confidence as Kim Tyanthi fleet. Commander was a compact woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her surroundings. When she walked through the station corridors, alien civilians moved aside without being asked, creating clear paths wherever she went. Commander Subin, this is an honor, Taiyang said while greeting his colleague in the main docking bay. I hope your journey from Earth was pleasant. The fleet commander smiled, but her expression carried the same hidden edge that the aliens had learned to recognize in Taiyang, quite educational diplomat. Kim, she replied while observing the Vorthan soldiers who were supposed to provide security. I had time to review recent intelligence reports about our hosts. The resumed peace talks took place in a larger conference room to accommodate the additional Earth representatives. 6 humans now sat across from representatives of 12 alien species. The balance of power in the room had shifted dramatically. General Krax opened the new session with an announcement that surprised everyone present. The Vorthan Empire wishes to express our sincere regret for the unfortunate incident during Diplomat Kim's facility tour. We have conducted a thorough investigation and implemented new safety protocols. Fleet Commander Subin activated a holographic display that showed detailed schematics of Earth military organization. Thank you, General. Your commitment to safety is appreciated. Now let U.S. discuss the current galactic security situation. The display showed statistics that made several alien delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Earth total population was listed at 12 billion, with every citizen receiving basic combat training as part of their education system. Are 12 billion citizens. We currently have 50 million with advanced military training and approximately 5 million with elite special forces experience, Commander Subin said in a matter of fact tone. These numbers represent our reserve capacity, not our active military forces. Ambassador Park from the Zentari Federation clicked her mandibles rapidly. Elite Special Forces, she repeated. Are you referring to soldiers like Diplomat Kim? The fleet commander glanced at Taiyang, who nodded slightly. Kim represents one of our special operations units called Navy SEALs, but we have 46 other special forces organizations, each with different specializations. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as the aliens processed this information. They had assumed that Taiyang's capabilities were unique, or at least rare, among humans. Instead, they were learning that Earth had millions of similar warriors. We have units that specialize in space combat, others in urban warfare, some in deep reconnaissance, and quite a few in what we call unconventional operations. Commander Subin continued. Each unit trains for specific types of missions that support our diplomatic objectives. War Chief Thurgan from the hegemony of SCORE raised his hand with obvious reluctance. Could you clarify what you mean by unconventional operation? Staying answered the question while maintaining his diplomatic smile. Operations designed to achieve political objectives through methods that do not involve large-scale military engagements. War Chief, very cost-effective and usually permanent in their results. The alien delegates began whispering among themselves in various languages, most of which the Earth representatives understood perfectly. The humans had just described a civilization that could field millions of elite soldiers while maintaining the appearance of a peaceful diplomatic society. General Krax cleared his throat nervously. Given these revelations, perhaps we should accelerate our treaty negotiations. The Vorthan Empire is very interested in establishing comprehensive agreements with Earth. Commander Subin nodded approvingly. Excellent, General. I have brought updated treaty drafts that address security cooperation, trade agreements, and what we call mutual defense arrangements. The new Earth proposals were distributed to each alien delegation, but the terms had changed significantly from Taeyong's original offers. Now the agreements included provisions for human military advisors, joint training programs, and technology sharing that heavily favored Earth. The Crystalli ambassador vibrated at frequencies indicating confusion. These terms seem quite different from the original proposals. Why has Earth position become more demanding? Taiying leaned forward to address the question. When we began these negotiations, we were operating under certain assumptions about galactic political stability. Recent events have shown us that Those assumptions were incorrect. Fleet Commander Subin activated another holographic display showing regional star maps with current military deployments. Several species have been expanding aggressively into territories that threaten established trade routes. This creates security challenges that require more comprehensive solutions. What the aliens did not realize was that the humans had been planning this exact scenario for months. The incident in the power chamber had simply provided the perfect justification for implementing agreements that would establish Earth dominance in this sector. The negotiations continued for 6 hours with each alien species, trying to secure the best possible terms while avoiding any actions that might provoke human displeasure. The Vorthan Empire signed first, followed quickly by the Zentari Federation and the Crystalli. Collective War Chief Thurgan held out until the final hour before reluctantly agreeing to terms that included human oversight of score military activities near Earth-controlled space. The aggressive species had built their reputation on intimidating weaker civilizations, but they had never encountered humans before. As the signing ceremony concluded, Ambassador Park approached Tiang with obvious curiosity. I noticed that all of these agreements include provisions for human military advisors, she said. Will these advisors have backgrounds similar to your? Tiang smiled while organizing the signed documents in his briefcase. Each advisor will be selected based on the specific needs of their assignment. Ambassador, some will be diplomats with military experience, others will be military personnel with diplomatic training. What he did not mention was that every human military advisor would have at least 10 years of special operations experience, and most would have significantly more. The aliens were about to discover that human military advisors could be even more dangerous than human diplomats. Fleet Commander Subin addressed the assembled alien delegates as the session ended. Earth is pleased to formalize these agreements and looks forward to many years of productive cooperation. We believe that mutual understanding and respect form the foundation of lasting peace. The alien representatives filed out of the conference room with their signed treaties, most of them still trying to understand how completely the negotiation dynamics had changed in just 1 week. They had entered the talks expecting to dictate terms to a weak human species. Instead, they found themselves bound by agreements that gave Earth unprecedented influence over their military activities, trade policies, and territorial expansion. The humans had transformed a simple peace negotiation into a comprehensive reorganization of regional power structures. As Tiang and Commander Subin walked toward their quarters, the fleet commander smiled with satisfaction. Phase 1 is complete, she said quietly. How long before they realize what just happened? Tiang considered the question while reviewing the signed documents. Based on similar historical examples, probably 6 to 8 months. But by then, the new command structures will be operational and reversal will be extremely difficult. The Earth representatives had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had used a single violent incident to justify the peaceful conquest of 12 different alien civilizations. The other species would wake up one day to discover that they had voluntarily submitted to human authority, and it had all started with aliens who thought they could safely murder a human diplomat. 6 months after the incident on the Vorthan space station, Kim Taeyang stood in his apartment on Earth, watching news reports from across the galaxy. The transformation had been more complete than even the most optimistic Earth strategists had predicted. Every major alien civilization now hosted human military advisors who were officially described as technical consultants and cultural liaisons. In reality, these advisors were special operations veterans who monitored alien military activities and reported directly to Earth Command. The morning news showed footage from the Zentari homeworld where Ambassador Park was announcing new security agreements that placed human observers in all Zentari military installations. The insect-like species had initially resisted the arrangements but changed their position after learning more about human capabilities. On his personal communication device, Taeyang received a message from Lieutenant Commander Choi Minho, who had been his teammate during their Navy SEAL years. Minho was now serving as Earth military attached to the Galactic Council. The Council voted unanimously to offer Earth a permanent seat, Minho reported. They also established something called the Taeyang Protocols for diplomatic protection. Nobody wants to be responsible for another incident like your staying smiled while reading the message. His former teammates had been scattered throughout the galaxy as advisors and attaches, each one a living reminder that humans were not the peaceful weaklings the aliens had assumed. The Galactic Council itself had been transformed from a loose alliance of competing species into something resembling a human-led organization. The other civilizations still maintained their independence, but major decisions now required Earth approval. General cracks appeared on the news, broadcast describing new joint training exercises between human and Vorthan forces. The massive alien who had once planned to murder Earth Diplomat now spoke with obvious respect about human military doctrine. "We have learned much from our human partners," he said while standing beside a human advisor who looked small enough to be his child. "Human warfare philosophy emphasizes efficiency over strength and results over glory. These are valuable lessons for any warrior culture." What the general did not mention was that the human advisor standing next to him was Captain Park Jiho, a former Delta Force operative who could eliminate the entire Vorthan command structure if necessary. The aliens had requested human military guidance, never realizing they were inviting occupation. Transformation extended beyond military arrangements. Human corporations had negotiated exclusive trading rights with species that previously refused to deal with Earth technologies. Human research stations were being established in systems that had been closed to outsider exploration. War Chief Thurgan from the hegemony of Skor had become one of the most vocal supporters of human leadership after his species attempted to test Earth resolve by raiding a human colony. The response had been swift and devastating. 3 Skor battle fleets simply disappeared during what human reports described as training accidents. Now, Thurgan appeared regularly on galactic news broadcasts praising human wisdom and calling for greater cooperation with Earth policies. His aggressive species had learned that humans could be even more ruthless than Skor warriors when their interests were threatened. The most significant change was in how conflicts between alien species were resolved. The phrase, "let's talk about this," had taken on new meaning throughout the galaxy. Nobody wanted to be in a position where talking failed and humans decided to solve problems through other methods. Stein received a visit from Fleet Commander Subin, who was preparing for her next assignment as Earth Ambassador to the Outer Rim territories. The remote region contained several species that had not yet experienced direct human contact. "Your little diplomatic incident has become the foundation of our entire galactic strategy," she said, while reviewing star charts in his apartment. "Every species now understands that human diplomats are not helpless civilians." The incident had created something unprecedented in galactic history. Earth had achieved hegemony without fighting a single major war. The mere demonstration of human capabilities had been sufficient to convince alien civilizations to accept voluntary subordination. Tang packed his belongings for his own next assignment as ambassador to the Delphine cluster, where 3 different species were considering formation of an independent federation. His job would be to ensure that any new political arrangements included appropriate human oversight. In his diplomatic briefcase, alongside treaties and trade agreements, he still carried the ceramic seal that had started everything. The simple identification device that had become an improvised weapon now served as a reminder of how quickly peaceful negotiations could change. The galaxy had learned that humans preferred diplomacy but excelled at war. They sent negotiators to establish treaties, but those negotiators were capable of destroying entire military units if negotiations failed. The combination had proven irresistible to alien species that respected strength above all else. As his transport ship prepared for departure, Tiang reflected on the changes 6 months had brought. Earth was no longer fighting for acceptance in the galactic community. Instead, they were being asked to lead it. The other species had discovered that humans were the apex predators of diplomatic warfare. They could smile politely while dismantling your civilization. They could offer generous terms while establishing permanent dominance. They could appear weak while demonstrating overwhelming strength throughout the galaxy. Alien children now learned about the human diplomat, who had defeated 7 Vorthan soldiers with nothing but improvised weapons. The story had become a cautionary tale about underestimating species that appeared peaceful. Military academies on dozens of worlds included mandatory courses on human combat doctrines, studying every detail of Taeyong's fight in the power chamber. Young alien warriors watched the security footage that had mysteriously become available despite the supposed system malfunctions. The most important lesson was taught. In every alien diplomatic school, never assume that a species' preference for peace indicates inability to wage war. Humans had demonstrated that the most dangerous opponents were often those who understood the true cost of violence Earth had achieved, something that no other species in galactic history had managed. They had convinced their enemies to surrender without realizing they were surrendering. The aliens believed they were entering into partnerships with equals when they were actually accepting subordinate positions as Taeyong's ship entered hyperspace, carrying him toward his next diplomatic mission. He wondered how the Delphine cluster would react to human involvement in their political development. The pattern had been consistent. Across the galaxy, initial resistance, followed by acceptance, followed by enthusiastic cooperation. The transformation had been so complete that most alien species now competed for human approval. Earth diplomatic favor had become the most valuable commodity in galactic politics, and human displeasure was something to be avoided at any cost. Kim Taeyang had started as a single diplomat trying to prevent a war. Instead, he had become the catalyst for a peaceful revolution that placed humans at the center of galactic civilization. The man who had once been dismissed as a weak negotiator had become the symbol of human supremacy, and throughout the galaxy, when different species gathered to discuss politics, trade, and territorial disputes, one phrase had become universally understood: